Regional IGF 2020. Obviously, this year we have a new format in that we're doing it virtually. And, you know, in a lot of ways, I think it just goes to demonstrate how useful the internet has become, that even though we could not meet physically this year, we are here still getting together virtually from across the region and even beyond. My name is Rajnesh Singh. I'm chair of the APNIC Multi-Stakeholder Steering Group, and it's a pleasure for me to welcome you all here today. We have Day Zero, which we've been doing for a long time now at the APNIC, as this provides a real opportunity for people who are new to the regional IGF, as well as to internet governance, as well as our fellows and other people who perhaps joining us for the first time. It gives them an opportunity to engage and interact with all of us, get a bit of an update on what is expected over the next couple of days. And as well, for those who might not be familiar with every single topic that's discussed at these sort of meetings, at least have some understanding of what the other thematic areas are and what sort of things people will be talking about. We have an action-packed agenda, even though we're doing this virtually, as you would have seen that over the next 3 days, or next 4 days, if I include today, we've got a whole bunch of things that are going to be happening. There are 4 thematic areas. My colleague Anju Mangal will shortly introduce you to all those. And of course, we have discussions in each of those thematic areas from people who will be leading those later today. What I wanted to discover very briefly was a little bit about what APNIC is all about. I think we can all realize that we have the way the internet has developed over the years. One thing that's been constant is the change that has been brought about within the internet, but as well as what it's been doing to other sectors and other bits and pieces of how things work together. I think a lot of all that came to the fore when we had this issue with the pandemic earlier this year, or from the start of late last year, really. And then, you know, the shutdowns that came into place and the social restrictions and so on and so forth. In the early stages, there was a lot of concern that the internet could not cope. And that was interesting in itself, because people very quickly realized that the only way there could be some semblance of normal life was if we were to transition to doing things on the internet, you know, be it working from home or learning from home and doing all the other things we needed to do to keep life going. Much of the fears were unfounded, I would say. The core infrastructure of the internet was quite resilient. It kept up with what was required of it. Yes, there were some instances where applications and services struggled, but that was more to do with scale and how they could cope with the demands that had been put on them rather than the core technical infrastructure. So the core internet technical infrastructure, I think, has served us well and continues to do so. And that in itself, I think, highlights the need for why we need to be very careful in how, very careful as well as very engaged in how we look at internet governance as a whole. Because it's no longer just about the technical bits and pieces that make the internet run. There's so many things in and around the internet now. And if you look at the various sessions this year and the thematic areas themselves, you'll see they have a very broad spectrum of issues they will cover. And that's why I think it's very important that, you know, whatever we discuss at these sort of meetings, they're not just one-dimensional, but they're multi-dimensional discussions. And I do believe that you will see that happening over the next couple of days. There's also a need, I think, to be aware of the different points of view. And that's why we like to say that, you know, we provide this forum for people to come and engage, to discuss, to debate. But whatever discussions we get into, whatever debates, sometimes the debates can be passionate, of course, but please always be respectful of the others who engage in debate with you. I think that really has been an important part of the Asia-Pacific regional IGF in particular. You know, the diverse region we have, the very large cultural diversity that we have in the region. there's a need to ensure that we respect each other's points of view. You may not agree with someone, you may disagree with someone, but the fact still remains, if we do it in a respectful manner, it really helps move the discussion along, rather than having to just shut down discussion due to obtuse disagreements, for instance. I do hope that all of you will be able to engage yourselves in the Asia Pacific Regional IGF. This is our 11th event. We had humble beginnings in 2010. And over the years, I think you see we have grown in stature and profile, as well as the reach that we have. If I just look back at the past 2 years, we've been to extreme ends of the region. We were in the Pacific Islands the year before, and last year we were in Vladivostok, which is what I would call the western extreme of the region, or at least of our region as we define it. So what we do get from that, of course, is this ability to look at how people in different places look at the internet issues and what sort of points of view they bring across. This year, again, is going to be quite interesting because we're doing it completely virtually. One advantage of doing it virtual, of course, is the fact that we don't have to really look at the issues of visas and travel costs and getting people from here and there. So with that in mind, of course, I think this gives us a lovely opportunity to have far much more participation from people who perhaps would not be able to make it to a physical event. So I think that is one good part to going virtual this year. The APR-IGF itself is run by what we call the Multi-Stakeholder Steering Group, or the MSG, for which I'm the current chair. It's a group made of people from various sectors from all across the region, different roles they play. And at this stage, I would like to actually invite you, if you do feel an interest in contributing to the work of the Asia Pacific Regional IGF, you're quite welcome to join the MSG. Please reach out to the Secretariat or myself, and we can point you in the right direction. We're always looking for new people to come on board, and no one can do these things forever, so we have people rotating in and out. And so it's always good to have new people coming in. It does take a lot of work, and I would just like to acknowledge the work that my colleagues on the MSG have, the time they've spent, their personal time basically, to bring this event to you this year. So thanks to all of those who have worked on that, including the various committees that we have, which puts together the program, the fellowships, and all the other things that make an event like this successful. We are streaming across multiple platforms this year, and my friends at .asia and the team who are the secretariat, but as well as helping with logistics, as well as my good friend Jolie McFay from who's in New York, but is also helping us with a lot of these live streaming. Again, thank you all for contributing your time and effort to making this happen. In terms of how to further engage with the MSG, we have a social media presence, so we'd invite you to make use of that. We've got hashtags which we're using for this event, so please try and amplify your involvement in this and the things you hear and say, because the more we talk about it across multiple platforms and channels, I think the better the messaging becomes then. We also have discussion lists that you're welcome to join. And again, all that information is available on the APR-IGF website. But if you can't find that, please do get in touch with myself or the secretary. We're happy to point you in the right direction, and hope that you're able to continue engaging in this space. The things that we need to cover every year, I think, keeps on broadening. And no matter what your day job is or where your interests lie, I think the way the internet has transformed and touched everyone's lives, and particularly right now during this pandemic issue, that we really need a greater diversity of voices. We need more people involved, and the more points of view we have, the more discussions we can have in what we call the multi-stakeholder model. I think that will end up enriching whatever comes out of this. One of the great outcomes of the Asia Pacific Regional IGF, which we have pioneered, is what we call the synthesis document. So my colleague Jennifer will talk a little bit about that later on. And I'd invite you to contribute to that. That's an integral part of the APR IGF. You may not be able to attend every session and engage in every session, but the synthesis document gives you an opportunity to put across points of view. It's not an outcome document. It's not a policy outcome document or anything of that sort, as you would imagine. The diversity we have in this region makes something like that very hard to achieve in the short time we have in doing these events. So what the synthesis document does is it collects the views of the region. That's how I like to describe it. It's the views of the region. Sometimes the views might disagree with each other, but the point is they're different points of view, which reflect what the thinking in the region is. And do realize this region is half the world. So obviously we will have different points of view. We will have different perspectives on certain things, and that's fine. And that's why the synthesis document becomes a very important document. You can see some of the previous iterations of that, which are available online. So I would really encourage you to please provide some input into that. Everyone who participates in the APR IGF is welcome to contribute to the document, and my colleagues will circulate the links for that shortly as well. With that, I do hope you enjoy your time at the Asia Pacific Regional IGF. I also hope that you continue to stay engaged. We want to be a platform for everyone, basically. So please do consider staying engaged. We have an annual event. This is our main thing every year. But throughout the year, we get, there's a discussion list, for example, which you can join and keep the momentum going that way. I think I have spoken enough. I think we need to get on to more interesting things, which is why we're all here for. So with that, I would like to introduce my colleague Anju Mangal. She's my vice chair, and she's been hard at work helping me and the MSG, ensuring that we pull off a successful event this year. So with that, Anju, the floor is yours to introduce the sub-themes. Thank you. Anju, are you there?
Sorry. Oh, sorry, I was muted. Can you all hear me? Okay. Well, yeah, I was saying thank you, Raj. I think I feel more like a secretary than a vice chair today. Anyway, thanks for setting the scene for day 0. Bula and namaste to all. Special and warm welcome to our wonderful viewers from the Asia and the Pacific region, and also other parts of the world. I hope you're well. As Raj said, we all face adversity from time to time, and some of us are finding it difficult to cope, especially during COVID-19 pandemic, even a natural disaster, or your kid suddenly appearing in the background while you're doing the webinar. I'm sure it's happened to most of us. It's crazy time, but we're all in this together. So yeah, today is a special day, as Raj mentioned, and it's also Sunday, but it's day 0 and it's the capacity building track. This means it's about you today. We're here to learn as well and have a two-way interactive session, So let's make it fun. But before I start and before I introduce the speakers, please note the following. We have live closed captioning, so please feel free to use that in case you're having trouble hearing. As admin mentioned in the chat forum, you can also click show full transcript and then click for it to pop up on a separate window. For our friends and colleagues with disability that have joined the session today, please note that we have support team to help you and assist. We would also appreciate if everyone could mute their mic throughout the sessions. You're welcome to switch on your video, but please do not distract the speaker. And if you have any questions or concerns, please use the chat forum. Someone will respond to you during the session. And as Raj mentioned, that we have the APRIGF Facebook, Twitter hashtag. So feel free to tweet and Facebook while we are having this session. And yeah, share your thoughts on what we could do in terms of, APRIGF and how we can move forward with the discussion. So let's start. We have our key experts who will share the topics and issues under each sub-theme. So let me quickly introduce the speakers and sub-themes. We have cybersecurity, safety, and trust, which will be presented by Noelle from the Internet Society, ISOC. We have the digital inclusion, gender equality, and diversity session presented by Liza, will be presented by Liza, from Freedom of Media Association, and then we have the Human Rights and Ethics one presented by Gayatri from APC, Association for Progressive Communication, and finally Innovation and Development presented by Sylvia and Duncan from Asia Pacific Network Information Center. I'm using a lot of acronyms, but feel free to Google it, or if you're not familiar with the technical jargons, otherwise just please use the chat forum. So let's sit back and relax and listen to our experts. I hope you all have your cup of tea, your water. It's exciting time. So without any further ado, let me introduce our first wonderful speaker, Noelle. Over to you, Noelle.
Thank you very much, Anju. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for those of us participating beyond the region. I've seen a few. Thank you for being here on a Sunday and for participating in the APRGF. So I'll start by setting a common expectation for us for the next 25 minutes. I won't be preempting the sessions in the next 3 days by going into great detail about the specific topics that we're going to have. But what I'll do is to try to paint a big picture, essentially a backdrop against which these issues are happening. And hopefully in the breakout session later today, we can have a productive exchange about how we think the situation could evolve from here. And we all know what here means, given what we're going through now, what the issues that have arisen are during the pandemic, etc. So, cybersecurity, safety, and trust. Let's start with a general observation that I think will also set the context for our discussions in the next few days, especially on these themes, and that is about cyber attacks, incidents that affect our online safety, our confidence on the internet. They are growing every day. What we collectively can call as cyber threats. So these are affecting governments, these are affecting companies, these are affecting ordinary users like us. Now, in the last couple of months, we've seen our own cybersecurity agencies, we've seen international organizations really highlight the big jump in cybercrime. And this is across the board. Not only attacks on systems that are online, but also criminal activity that use the internet to target people, to target institutions and organizations who rely on it for education, for work, for entertainment and communications. Well, essentially, most, if not all facets of our everyday lives these days. We have incidents of phishing, we have incidents of online scam, fraud, ransomware, even sale of fake PPEs, you name it. And these threats are not going to disappear once we've found a vaccine. This is a trend that is accelerating as more and more people and things, as more and more things go online, increasing what we call the attack surface for cyber criminals. And this is relevant for the APAC region because the region is some of the biggest sources of cyber attacks, unfortunately, but also some of the biggest targets of cyber attacks. Now, one form of cyber attack that's been getting a lot of attention from governments in the last couple of years are state-sponsored attacks. You may have heard the news recently about certain countries hacking into other systems to steal COVID vaccine research, what they call essentially cyber espionage. This has been flagged by countries like Australia, which claim that they've been a big target this year of malicious activities by another country, which I won't name. But this is not limited to, say, intellectual property theft. This can also mean attacks on critical infrastructure. So we've heard reports this year of attacks on health services and health systems, and even political structures in cases of one country interfering in the elections of another country, for example, by bombarding voters with fake news or by hacking political parties. So all of this has been a big incentive for countries to try and come to an agreement on what is acceptable behavior for countries when it comes to cyberspace. So when we say norms, essentially what we're talking about here are shared beliefs within a community about how its members should behave. So cyber norms are appealing because they're seen as a more flexible, they're a more nimble alternative to dealing with cyber threats, as opposed to legislation, formal law, that are seen as clunky, and then they're slow to develop and they're even slower to implement. And cyber norms don't necessarily have to come from states. So we have initiatives like the Freedom Online Coalition, we have the GCSC, the Global Commission for the Stability of Cyberspace, which are multi-stakeholder projects. But I believe that the discussion that we will have this week will focus on cyber norms driven by existing institutions, in this case, the UN. So the challenge with norms development as an activity driven by bigger bodies like the UN is that there's an impression that they will carry the biases of the institutions with them. Hence the preference for standalone initiatives like the ones that I've mentioned for norms development, because it allows us to focus on the needs of cyberspace. So there's been a lot of movement in norms development in the last couple of years, since I would say 2015. And so far, what we've seen states agree to, whether bilaterally or in bigger settings like the UN, are more aspirational norms. So these are not the best practices that they already are doing. Rather, these are more like principles that they aspire to reach at some point in time. Moving on from cybersecurity to the issue of safety, we encounter a different dimension to security, not only because we're talking about the safety of our online activities, but how technologies, how the internet is being used to somehow keep us safe offline. Specifically, we have a session that we will have in the coming week, focusing on the use of technology to help solve the risks and threats that women encounter offline, whether it's domestic violence or stalking or harassment. Now, this plays into the bigger narrative of the internet as somehow a panacea for the social, cultural, and economic problems that we've grappled with for decades and for centuries, whether it's poverty and different kinds of inequalities. But what we're finding out as we start to use the internet and as we start to use it more and more is that these tools can also reinforce and even exacerbate what we call structural inequalities. An example would be gender discrimination, and it can even facilitate harassment and sexual violence. For example, a woman being stalked or spied on through their mobile phones or through their smartwatches. So if you haven't encountered it yet, next week you will hear about a term called tech solutionism, which unsurprisingly came from the Silicon Valley, from what I hear. And this is the idea that technology is going to solve the problem for us. We see the reliance on technology, for example, when it comes to contact tracing apps and measures. I read of an app in Poland that requires COVID patients to take regular selfies of themselves just to prove that they're in the house, that they're indoors. Or we can look at China's, a similar app in China that gives you like a color-coded health rating for the day. And that dictates what you will be allowed to do with your everyday life. So there's a concern that these tech solutions might also be keeping us from asking the hard questions about the current state of affairs, whether it's the failure of our institutions that we've built over the years, or the ubiquity of state and commercial surveillance, as you can see in the contact tracing apps. And these tools may even be preventing us from finding a solution to the root causes of the problem. Like the current global health crisis, and how it got this big has a lot to do with the failure of our institutions to work properly. Yet another dimension to security and the internet, especially for vulnerable populations, that we will zoom into this week, is the safety of children. So we've seen reports in media from child welfare organizations noting that obscene material about children online has really gone up. mostly because of the rise in demand, but also because the monitoring and the takedown of those materials have been incapacitated by the crisis. So, for example, if you can't have people together in call centers, then you have less people to respond to hotlines, you have less people to respond to reports about child sexual abuse. This is also very relevant for the region because we have some countries, like my country, the Philippines, unfortunately, which is one of the biggest sources of these materials. And you also have some countries in Asia Pacific, like Australia, that are a market. So thankfully, online child exploitation is one of those issues that we all agree is bad. It sees relatively unquestionable cooperation among different stakeholders, payment systems, law enforcement, tech companies, NGOs, etc. But increasingly, the way these issues are being framed these days has also led to certain proposed solutions that would supposedly solve these crimes, but actually endanger not only the trust that we have on the internet, but also the security of everyone using the internet. And one of the proposals being advanced is to allow law enforcement to access our communications and our data online. One of the ways they propose to do this is through what they call backdoors, what you might have encountered as exceptional access policies, meaning law enforcement will be allowed to subvert the security of data and information that is transmitted online. Another proposal that I think came from the UK is called the ghost proposal, wherein law enforcement will be allowed to insert someone in your conversation with another person without you knowing it. It's a bit freaky. So in at least one session this week, you're going to hear a word which, if you haven't heard yet, is called encryption. Essentially, it's a way of scrambling data so that it's only readable to the person or the entity who sent it and the person or the entity for whom it was intended. A very simple way of putting it is encryption turns what you're saying or what you're typing into a secret language that only you and whoever you're talking to can understand. So it can be hard to wrap your head around it once you start going into how it works. But for the purpose of this session, suffice to say that it's one of the pillars of internet security, and you may not know it, but you use it every day. So every time we use online banking, we pay for something online, put our passwords when we log into our accounts, send messages on WhatsApp. We use systems that rely on encryption to make sure our bank details don't get stolen, that no one impersonates us, that we can't be spied on when we write or say something. And it's not just us. Governments and businesses rely on it to secure critical information, power grids, transportation, etc., sensitive information. Now, the common argument that we've seen is that, well, why are you so worried? It's only government that can access your data. We won't give it to the bad guys. But as we've also seen repeatedly, governments are not immune to hacking data breaches. We see that all the time in Asia Pacific. We have multiple examples of secret exploits being used by governments getting out. So what organizations like ISOC has to say about this is that what you want to do essentially is to introduce a weakness into a secure system. And as security experts say, there is no weakness that only good guys can know and bad guys have no way of knowing. Another point to make is that once we introduce these weaknesses and criminals know that they can be tracked, what's stopping them from using other tools where they can't be tracked, which they have done. They have done that several times before. So what do you do once criminals have moved on, but then now our security is in shambles and everyone else is vulnerable? So we don't have to answer this right now. That's what the workshops are for. But what I can say at this point is that when we go into these sessions on cybersecurity and safety and trust in the next couple of days, is that there are going to be a number of approaches emerging that try to stop and mitigate what we are increasingly afraid of about the internet, and that is an internet that enables bad behavior. And what we need to think about when we hear or contemplate these solutions is that which of these are going to preserve or uphold the values that have made the internet such a powerful and indispensable tool for the world, especially at a time like this, an internet that is global, resilient, and open and secure, and which of these solutions are going to limit the future utility of the internet for us. So let me stop there as we go into the part of the discussion where we hear about your thoughts in turn, especially around these themes. And if I'm not mistaken, and the Secretariat can correct me, we also have our session organizers present. So this is also a chance for you to let them know what your concerns are, if there are any issues that are bothering you, to make sure that they are addressed in the sessions. We can try to address them here. That's what the Q&A is for. So figuratively speaking, let me hand the mic over to you, guys, and let's also hear what you have to say.
Great. Thank you so much, Noelle. Great points on cybersecurity, safety, and privacy. Speaking of cyber attack, we have some stalkers and so-called hackers who are trying to take control. But the best part is that we have a great secretariat and our chair who are special cyber force team. So go away. And don't worry, we will continue. But I've changed the format a little, just to deal with some of the challenges. So we will have Q&A and discussions after all the presentations. So can you please keep your questions? If you like, just use the chat form, and Noelle, you're welcome to use the chat form to answer some of the questions, but discussion, we will do it after, towards the end. So is that okay? I hope that's okay. Okay, great. Please stay and don't leave. Our next speaker is now Liza from FMA. Sorry, I made a mistake. It's the Foundation for Media Alternatives. Sorry, Liza, over to you. Thanks.
Thanks, Anju. So hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. So I will be talking about digital inclusion, gender equality, and diversity. So next slide, please. So first, I'll be presenting to you the outline of the presentation. Next slide, please. The control isn't with me. Yeah. Okay. So there will be 3 parts in this presentation. First is a definition of terms so that we have a common understanding of the terms at hand, because these are words that you will be encountering, most of the fellows here or those who are new to the APRIGF. These are terms that you will be encountering when you attend the different sessions here. So we might as well have a common understanding of these terms. And then the second part is that will be about why digital inclusion, gender equality, and diversity should be talked about, why these things matter. And for the third part, I hope I can give you a sneak peek into some of the sessions that have sub-themes on digital inclusion, gender equality, and diversity. Okay, so let's start with the term digital inclusion. When we talk about digital inclusion, we're talking about the ability of individuals, of groups, and communities to access and use information and communications technologies, or ICTs. This is not just about issue of access to the internet, but when we talk about digital inclusion, there should also be, availability of hardware. Is there affordable or robust internet service in your area? This is also about the availability of internet-enabled devices that meet the needs of the users. This is also about applications and online content that are designed so that one can, use the platform well. This is about training for digital availability of training for digital literacy skills, so that we can all participate and collaborate in different efforts that are happening online as well. Yeah. So the next is about diversity. This is a term which is very familiar to all of us. I think majority of us here are from the Asia Pacific region, and so we know what diversity is. We're so the region is so big, and the population is so big, and we are so diverse when it comes to culture, religion, beliefs, and understanding. This means that this also means that each of us, each individual is unique, and we have our differences and as individuals. But given that, it also means that we, even if we are diverse, we have equal rights and opportunities regardless of our gender, sexual orientation, our race, our religion, our beliefs, our culture, the economy, the age, and employment situation. Yeah. Next, please. Then when we talk about the issue of gender equality, well, this definition, I got it actually from the Philippines Magna Carta of Women. No? So when you talk about gender equality, this is the principle that asserts that the equality of men and women and their right to enjoy equal conditions so that they can realize their full potentials as human beings and be able to contribute to and benefit from the results of development. This means recognizing that all human beings are free and equal in dignity and rights. We have to remember it is in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So when we talk about gender equality, so don't be afraid of this word, don't be afraid of the word gender, because a lot of people, especially males, would shun away from it. This isn't just about women's issues. It refers to equal rights, responsibilities, and opportunities of women and men, of girls and boys, irrespective of whether they were born male or female. It recognizes also the diversity of the different groups of men and women. So again, this is not just about women's issues. It must also involve and fully engage men. So next, so why should it matter? So why should we be talking about digital inclusion, diversity, and gender equality? Well, I think it has been said several times from the start of this day zero of the APRIGF. The internet is relevant to everyone, especially the young people here. Who were born digital. I think some people can't imagine their lives without the internet. And it is also the same for a lot of us digital immigrants as well. We use the internet and digital devices in our work, whether it's to find jobs or to perform our work. Governments use it to provide services to their constituents. In schools, students use it to do research, to submit their homeworks. We're all familiar with that. Even hospitals, health services rely on technology to advance health. For instance, we know about remote health services, remote consultation that's becoming a trend, especially in the region. And we have also seen so much development in our economy because of technology. So it is there. It is something that will be with us, that will stay with us. And yeah, and for some of us, of course, being offline is something that is unimaginable, because if you're not there online, then you miss out on a lot of things, maybe on learning, from earning, you miss valuable services available, and as well as participation in democratic spaces. Next, please. If I borrowed this slide from Hootsuite, this is about internet penetration in the region. If you look at the Asia Pacific region, of course, you will see that digital inequality exists. Not everyone in the region is already connected. So we are some of the lucky ones who are not in this, who are part of this statistics, who have access to the internet. Next slide, please. This next slide, which again I borrowed from Hootsuite, is about the number of people in millions in our region who are not connected. So you would see that still a lot of people are not there, and that means something from them. For them, they are not able to, enjoy the benefits that some people do online. And when the longer some segments of our society remain unconnected, then it also has a cost for society. We need to include everybody. Again, as mentioned earlier, whatever race, gender, religion, even persons with disabilities, and this has time and again has been discussed. For instance, the United Nations has already identified the internet as a basic human right, and that which should be extended to all citizens of the world. And this is also already being reflected in a lot of documents in the UN, even in some countries. Some countries have even adopted access as a right, have recognized access as a right. And when we look at, for instance, the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, Article 9 of that convention already talks about giving persons with disabilities access so that they can enjoy equal opportunities with everyone else. Okay, next please. And then of course, gender matters. Again, don't be afraid when you hear of words about gender, about feminism. These all, as mentioned earlier, when we talk about gender equality, this is about equal opportunities and rights for men and women. But we know that when we look at the societies where we live in, there's a stark gender disparity when we talk about the economic and political sphere. For instance, a lot of women still earn less than their male counterparts, and this is globally. If you look at for instance, in your parliaments, in your own parliaments, how many male parliamentarians are there as compared to female parliamentarians? And we should be concerned about this because the issues that they carry would reflect on the policies that are coming out. Are they beneficial to women? Are they beneficial to men, etc.? The figure here shows the gender gap in the region. According to the ITU, or the International Telecommunications Union, their figures show that 21% men are 21% more likely to be online than women. But that is the global average. But if you look at the figures in least developed countries, then this gap can rise up to 52%. And that speaks a lot about where women are at. If you look at the figures I showed to you earlier, the unconnected. So globally, there would be more about 2 billion women who don't have access to the internet at all. And that means they are being deprived of opportunities to use the internet, to learn, and to have their voices be heard. Next, please. Yeah. Of course, maybe some of you or maybe all of you have heard that there is, of course, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And one of these goals, SDG 5, is about gender equality. It says that to achieve gender equality, we need to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. That is the goal, but at the same time, it is part of the solution. If you want development, then you have to make people equal, and you have to empower women, because there is a lot that they can contribute to in this world. But the thing is that, of course, some of you would say that, when you talk about gender equality, it's always about women. Well, most of the time it is about women's issues because they are the ones who are sidelined. They are the ones who are not benefiting from a lot of the technologies that are happening. When it comes to harassment, for instance, online, Noelle mentioned it, there's a lot of women who are being victimized by abuse and harassment that is happening online. And during the lockdowns, we have seen how many cases actually of women who have been victims or who have been victimized by abuse and harassment online. And these are things that we have to look into. And there are actually things that we can do to protect everyone, especially women and girls online. Next, please. I just have to insert this. I think Raj, even Noelle mentioned somehow about COVID. With this, because with COVID-19, when we were on lockdown, we have really realized that the internet is important to all of us. Having access, being connected is important. the information that we needed then to know how to keep safe can be accessed online. We need to, during the start of the lockdown, people wanted to know how their families and friends, wherever they are doing, but you can't go to them and see them face to face. So it is really the internet that provided that opportunity, that connectivity that we needed. Our work was disrupted, but again, we were able to continue because we are connected. Children's education has shifted also online. And if we want to attend events, gatherings, etc., whether it's a wedding, graduation, a funeral service, it's all there in the internet. However, if you take a look at these photos here, there are many challenges still before us. Well, teachers in the Philippines having to climb mountains and just to get internet signal. Students in Indonesia who have to travel from their homes because there are some places which have very poor connectivity. The students in Peru who had to climb a mountain and attend online classes up a tree, and us be working online while at the same time doing work at home, especially women who are mothers, who have children. They perform both reproductive and productive work at the same time. Okay, yeah, so really the pandemic has exposed the poor infrastructure in many countries as well as poor policies, and that is something that we have to look into. Okay, I think I have a very few minutes left, so I would just like to promote the sessions that we have at the APRIGF that looks into issues of digital inclusion, gender equality, and diversity. So tomorrow there's one on accessible digital information, training and libraries. This is about reducing discrimination for persons with disabilities. Yeah, and so this will be highlighting the importance of digital information support and training for persons with disabilities. And I think in particular, this will highlight the situation of women with disabilities and how they cope with issues like violence against women. Then again, on the 28th as well, tomorrow, another session is about your approaches on technical capacity building. When you're talking about inclusion, we need capacity building so that everybody can benefit from the developments in technology and the internet. And then on the 29th, that's on Tuesday, this is bridging the digital gender divide. This is a session that my organization and the Web Foundation with Anju, we proposed this. So hopefully you can attend that. The session will look at the issue of the gender digital divide by sharing results of a gender gap audit scorecard that utilize the framework that looks into rights, education, access, content, and targets. And lastly, there's access to information, holistic approach to meaningful digital inclusion, and which draws from the experiences of libraries in different countries and will look at the policy and practice of digital inclusion. So yeah, after this discussion, I hope that most of us have learned and have a better understanding of what digital inclusion, gender equality, and diversity means. And then I'm sure that we'll be attending a lot of discussions, and hopefully you can use whatever you learned in this session when you attend the sessions. Let's say if you attend the session on cybersecurity, so you can ask yourself, how does this impact women? How does this impact persons with disability, marginalized sectors? And as Raj said earlier, we need to hear more diverse voices from the region in this APR-IGF session. So hopefully everyone can participate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liza. I'm so sorry about the time, because there's time issues as well. But thank you so much for your presentation. Now we will go to the question and answer session for the two speakers, and then we will take a break. So I will now open the floor to our participants for Noelle and Liza. Shall we start with Noelle on cybersecurity? Okay, we have Mayank who has raised his hand, but is it related to cybersecurity, Mayank? Or I give you the floor. Okay, I don't. If there is a problem.
Hello.
Okay, Mayank, please
Hello.
go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, it is a generalized question. Can we have a right to internet? Because all these things are related to internet only, but we do not have right to internet.
Thank you so much for your question. One of our speakers, Gayatri, will also respond to that question. So I will let her come in later and provide some response to that. For now, we need questions.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. For now, we need questions specifically for the cyber session. So please, are there any questions? Yik, let me give you the floor.
Yeah, I would like to ask Noelle about the cybersecurity question. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because you talk about the backdoor, you know, that's very interesting issue because it is a one.
Oh, you disappeared.
In different jurisdiction, even like in America or UK, you know, because UK is, they also have the British also surveillance, their usage, and as well as in China, even the law, you know, security law requires the internet service provider to comply for like if there's a national security concern, so they have to comply to assist the evaluation by the government agents. So, but there, I think there is some legitimate concern if there's a real national security, you know, demands. So instead of using the backdoor access to the data, what is the alternative way? Because backdoor, of course, is kind of the requirement, but if the requirement is based on legitimate base, or even with the legal provision to provide a legitimate base, is that still unacceptable or not? So if it's unacceptable, what is the alternative way to do that?
Thank you very much for your question. So this is a very thorny discussion point, to say the least, and I think the session that we will have on encryption in the coming week is partially designed to address alternatives to the solutions that are being proposed, but one of the not really solution, but one of the options that law enforcement, I believe, security experts are saying could explore more is the use of metadata for investigations that are more readily available by court request, court order, etc. That at the moment law enforcement is not taking full advantage of. Whether this is appropriate is something that is, you know, up for discussion. But I don't think, like Raj is saying in the chat, it's not a binary issue wherein if we somehow disregard the option of backdoors, that there's going to be a magic bullet that will answer everything. I think that metadata is one. There are other options that are being discussed, but what the point that I was trying to make in my intervention early on is that we should think broader than national security when we think about, you know, how do we stop crimes, because our solutions might lead to bigger problems.
Thank you so much, Noelle. I hope that response was good for Yik. We have our second person, Bhaskar. We'll give you the floor. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead, Bhaskar.
So my question is to the regarding digital inclusion. You know, whenever we talked about use the word inclusion, sometimes this word is the model of exclusion, because inclusion word sometimes not able to include everyone, such as people with disabilities. By the name of inclusion, we are seeing the services are not becoming accessible in this region. And in the COVID pandemics, we are the victim of that exclusion because, you know, internet and not affordable, technology is not accessible, and we people with disabilities in a real problem. Hope you understand the point.
Yes, Bashkar, point well taken. I know that we would want everyone, of course, to be included, as mentioned, whatever the race, religion, gender, wherever we are, whether we're from the rural area or not, everybody in the Asia Pacific region, it would be good. It's ideal for all of us to be included. But, you know, as I showed in the presentation as well, with the different figures, not everybody is connected still, and there are factors, that's why some people are not yet connected, and this has been much highlighted during the pandemic, of course, and because some are being pushed actually farther from being connected, because for instance, before, people were able to access, for instance, if you don't have devices and access, you can go to an internet cafe, you can go to libraries to access. But now with COVID, because you are unable to go out, then you don't have that capacity now to access the internet. There's still a lot of work that has to be done for everyone to be included. This would include, you know, making the internet accessible, by making it affordable to everyone, by putting connections in you know, far-flung areas. By this is also through digital literacy, because it's not enough that we just use, let's say, some applications like Facebook, for instance. It's not the real internet. There's only so much that you can get there. So there's still a lot that has to be done, and maybe some policies have to be made by our governments. And since we're here, maybe since we understand more, maybe we can push our governments, we can push our legislators to have policies that would make everyone in our country, in our communities, included. I hope I answered your question, Vashkar.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Okay, we will go to our next, just give me a sec, I'm having trouble because there's Arun. I'll give you the floor, and then I will then ask the people from the chat forum. So Arun, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Arun, we can. Please go ahead.
Yeah, my question is that we are living in certain regions in different countries, and cyber attacks are being can never be covered beyond geographical boundaries. If a commission of an act is an offense in my country, but the same is not an offense in the country where the server of intermediary is located, in that condition, intermediary denied to provide information to law enforcement agencies, then how can we tackle with these situations?
Noelle, I'll direct the question to you, please.
Sure. So there are, it actually depends on the topic at hand. So what I talked about, for example, online child exploitation, where there is widespread cooperation between governments in actually in investigation, etc. And it's even with amidst different laws, they can agree on one thing, and that is that, you know, they would like to stop this from happening. So they find a way around it, and they find a way to cooperate. So I would pose the question back to you, and what kind of information are we? Did you have something specific in mind that you were thinking about?
Arun, would you like to respond before I go to the next person in terms of question and answer? Thanks. Okay, if you don't have any further input, sorry, Noelle, I'll go to the next person. So we will go for Walter, and then I will switch to the chat forum. Thank you. Walter, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew. Can anybody hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go
Okay.
ahead, Walter.
Okay. Thank you very much. My question is for Lisa. It's regarding your stats about female or male usage of internet. Because that stat can be misleading. Because I want to understand if that stat reflects the opportunities given to both male and female in terms of, like for instance, if they're given the same opportunity to access the technology, the infrastructure, because sometimes the opportunities is the same. It's available to both female and or male, but some female can actually just choose not to actually use internet. So I'm not too sure if it's a comment or if it's a question. So I want to understand what's happening behind that stat. If it's for the opportunities, or maybe female chose not to use internet, or men chose to use internet more than female.
Hi, Walter. Yeah, I got those figures on the gender gap from the website of the Web Foundation. I think the figures were taken from the ITU. Yeah, of course, you can't really tell if you just have figures like that. You can't really tell the kinds of opportunities that women and men have, because if one has more access than the other, if one is living, let's say, in a more developed country, or one is from the urban area, then there might be more opportunities for that individual than somebody who do not have those opportunities. But usually, when they do this, when they have figures, they just ask questions. What do you have access to the internet? So I'm not privy to the kind of question, no, that they that were posed, so that people that you can say that somebody has access to the internet. But when you look at that, what the figures were just saying is that there are more men than women who have access to the internet, and that says something already. That because if you look at other countries as well, there are, in terms of culture, there are some men, for instance, who do not allow female members of their families to use the internet, or if they do, then the man should be present, or that sometimes they just borrow devices. So those are some of the nitty-gritty that goes into it. Of course, yeah, but of course, in some way, I agree with you that opportunities are different, and sometimes it's difficult if you just have figures. You can't really say what those are, and it would be good if there is a discussion, talks actually with women who are accessing the internet would be good, so that we can hear from them actually the real experience that they have.
Thank you so much, Lisa. We have exactly 10 minutes left, so I'm going to hand it over to Jen so that she can ask the questions from the chat forum participants. Thanks, Jen. Over to you. Jen, sorry, is our member of the Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you, Anju. So there is two questions. Sorry. There's two questions from chat. There is one from Kao Zhao Lin. How can experts come up with the simplest form of cybersecurity, but still offers the strongest security to the users? iPhone's first introduction was a hit because it was a simple interface. Revolutionary and stronger capacity, just one button on the entire surface was a huge selling point. Could we see this kind of setup in cybersecurity supports?
Thank you, Jen. So what I can say is that there are a lot of technologies now that have been democratized. Actually, if you think about encryption, it started with the US military, and up until the 1990s, it was basically a well-guarded government secret. But now, basically anyone who knows how can deploy it. So these are the types of solutions that don't necessarily have to be top-down, but can be easily deployed. And if they're deployed by a sufficient number of entities and organizations, then we can boost security. But I would push back on the notion that there is, as you say, as the solution that you cited was iPhone, is that there is one entity that can do all these things for us, because security is always a collaborative effort. So it's something that we have to adopt, and there are tools that now enable us to do that very easily.
Thanks a lot, Noelle. Jennifer, would you like to continue? There are two other questions from the chat participants. Thank you.
Hi, sure. This is a second question from the chat. The question reads, I am Tina, fellow of APRIGF. I am also interested in how cybersecurity can balance in convenience, because like in my home country, Hong Kong, e-pay system, or even more in China, but invasion of privacy may be a concern. May you share your view on the development in technology area with security? Thanks.
Thanks, Tina. So I'm not thoroughly familiar with the e-pay system in Hong Kong or in China, but what I can say is I think part of the way forward would have to be, there's still a tendency for us to frame these issues as an either or, that we have to sacrifice our security for convenience. We have to sacrifice our freedom of speech for security, things like that. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. Security of people and national security are complementary. And once we start seeing it that way, and once our policymakers start to see it that way, then we can move progressively to adopt and promote security technology such as encryption, which is actually good for everyone, even for national security.
Great, thank you, Noelle. Jennifer, are there any other questions? Any for Liza? Thanks. Oh, okay, I don't think there are any further questions. There is, okay, I will just check the chat forum. Okay, there are no further questions. So Noelle and Liza, let me ask you, what would be your key message to our newcomers and fellows? Let's start with you, Noelle.
I would say stay engaged, especially if this is your first time. Don't be afraid of the discussions. I think especially in Asia, I mean, even in my culture in the Philippines, we tend to see the expert as the expert. Like, okay, you have gold coming out of your mouth, and we cannot say anything, and we cannot dispute that. You should dispute it if you think it's if you don't agree with it, because that's how conversations happen, and that's how productive conversations happen. So I hope that you will take advantage of this opportunity to get your thoughts out about the internet, because what we always stress in the internet society is that you help shape the internet that you want for the future. So please assert that and assert that opportunity, and please be active.
Thanks. Liza, would you like to add?
I think I would just like to agree with what Noelle mentioned, yeah, especially for the new fellows here. Just speak your voices, let your voices be heard. I'm sure that there would be a lot of learning opportunities for you in the different sessions. But at the same time, you're also contributing a lot. You already have your knowledge there, but of course, some of the sessions might you may not agree with some of the thoughts that would be shared in the different sessions, but keep an open mind also, and just remember always that your contribution, your voices would help. And again, as Noelle mentioned, and since this is the Internet Governance Forum, this would help in shaping the kind of internet that we want for ourselves and for the future.
Okay, so I will hand it over to Jen again because there are a few more questions. I'm so sorry about this because it's really difficult for me to scroll through the questions on the chat forum. So Jennifer, over to you. I will only allow 2 more questions, and the rest, please use the chat forum to respond because we are going on a break soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Anju. There is actually quite a few more questions, but I do note that you want to just take 2 more. The next question over is from a participant, BK. How need for surveillance by government of a company can be accommodated without a backdoor?
So if I may answer that, I think this is related to the question that was posed earlier. So we have to also, unpack the issue of surveillance, which I think is something bigger than the discussion that we're going to have. But I do not have the magic answer for that. There are security experts that are advancing different alternatives to it. And I think that it's not so much a question that governments have to hand over for the rest of us to solve. I think they have to be part of the solution. We have to accept that it's unreasonable to compromise everybody's or sacrifice everybody's security for solutions that we think will solve the problem that we have, but actually is not going to. Honestly, if it does solve something, it's going to be for the short term because criminals will always find a way. So once we can agree that these are the things that we cannot sacrifice, then we can go into a conversation where we can collectively look for solutions that will work for both of us. Because right now, how the debate is being framed is that, okay, if you don't want us to have backdoors, then what do you propose? But it's not like that. It has to be a conversation between everyone because security is a collaborative effort.
Thank you so much, Noelle. Jennifer, over to you. I think we can allow 2 more questions. Only 2 more. Because it's a Sunday, I'm allowing it.
Well noted, Anju. So the next question comes from Dr. Vinod. Can we think of having the concept of right to universal legitimate cybersecurity, where the government as stakeholders gives a guarantee of minimum level of cybersecurity to each and everyone through some legal provision?
Thank you for that question. I think it depends on what aspect of security you're talking about, but as you can see, there's been recently a bunch of policies that have been trying to address that in different ways, whether it's security of critical infrastructure, whether it's security of data, which we can see now is kind of we're trying to mitigate or to enforce that through instruments like the GDPR. So I don't think, because security is a multifaceted topic and is a multifaceted theme, I don't think that there's there can be just one simple rule that will rule them all, so to speak. But what we can see is that there are definitely government-driven initiatives that are now trying to somehow put legal backing to kind of enable our security and enable our privacy on the internet.
Awesome. Thank you, Noelle. Jennifer, I'm so sorry. We have to go on a break because we also have to allow our other speakers to come on board. On this note, thank you so much, Noelle and Lisa. These are great discussions, but please be mindful we are running out of time, and also we don't want others to fall asleep. So on this note, I'll give you 4 minutes for a break. Go get your cup of water, a glass of water, sorry, cup of tea, and then we'll be back on shortly. Thank you. Don't leave, okay? Please go on a break, but do not leave. Thank you. Back on schedule. I hope you enjoyed your coffee, your water, your tea, even your, I don't know, your little exercise that you did. I did a little bit. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so we'll go to our next speakers. So our next speaker is Gayatri, and she will speak on human rights and ethics. Gayatri, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Anju. Give me a second. Let me turn my video on. Hi, I hope you can hear me, and welcome everyone to day 0 of the APRIGF. I work with the Association for Progressive Communications, and the aim of this session would not so much be for us to find answers, but rather let's try and focus on asking questions. So I'm going to really focus this session on asking not the right question, but asking several questions to help us kind of get through the next 2 to 3 days. It's very interesting, and I'm really glad that I'm going after the earlier 2 speakers, because they've set the stage for what are the kind of things that we need to be thinking about. And when we're talking about internet governance, it really is an important aspect, right? Because the internet is now undeniably sort of a non-negotiable in all our lives. Then comes the question of where is my space, or where is our space, and how this internet is being governed. Do I get a say at all in terms of how this internet is going to be governed? In terms of how I'm going to be told what's acceptable, what's not acceptable? How am I going to be protected? There are all of these questions. And we need some sort of a framework to think about these problems and to think about the solutions to these problems. Because like one of our speakers said, there's sort of a tendency now for us to technicalize all the problems, sort of throw AI at every problem, to come up, to assume that an algorithm is going to solve every sort of challenge that we have. Now, this session should help you sort of rethink that notion. Now, in terms of when we talk about human rights, what are we referring to, right? Human rights, quite simply, are just rights. They're just rights that each one of us have because of the mere fact that we exist, right? And it's really as simple as that, but it's not as simple an answer. These are entitlements, guarantees, what you can call them in many different ways, but essentially these are what we need to be able to live a life of dignity, and for us to be able to develop ourselves to be the best version of ourselves in the way that we see fit for ourselves, right? There are some values that heard in this discussion of human rights. During the session, we won't be going so much into the philosophical aspects of human rights, but really try to talk about how that relates to internet governance. Now, when it comes to human rights, some of the basic principles that we need to sort of get on board with is the fact that human rights are universal, which means that they apply to all of us and that they're inalienable. I might choose not to exercise a certain right of mine. So for instance, I have the freedom of speech. I might choose not to voice my opinion on a particular matter, but that doesn't mean that I've given up my freedom of expression. I've exercised a choice. Similarly, human rights are indivisible and they're interdependent, right? So you can't have a situation where you can give me a part of a right. And that, you say, okay, that's some sort of a part of a right that you exercise. I have a right or I don't, right? Quite simple. And human rights are interdependent. And this is actually something that we have to explore a little bit about. When they say interdependent, what they mean is that it's not as if one right is important and another right is unimportant. And this is exactly an issue that we'll have to talk about, especially when it comes to discourses around freedom of expression, cybersecurity. We are always given this impression that there is some sort of a balancing act that needs to be done between rights, as if we have to choose between one right against another right. But this really is a false notion. There's no question of balancing rights. It's a question of understanding rights and applying them in a way that it suits the particular situation we're looking at. So basically what interdependent means is that these rights are related to each other, and they need to sort of come together for us to realize human rights as a whole. And human rights are equal and they're non-discriminatory. So I'm as entitled to rights as anybody else. And the fact that I'm a woman or I'm from a minority community, my color, none of that should lead to me being discriminated in terms of what rights I have and what rights I don't have. Now, there's another whole side to this discussion, which is ethics. Now, ethics is a different discussion from rights, but they stem from a similar place. Now, ethics, quite simply, is a system of principles which is really hinging itself on this notion of what is morally right, what is morally good, what is morally right to do in a situation, what is morally good to do for me as an individual, and what is morally good for the society. What kind of ethics should I follow if I'm going to be a part of the society? The difference between human rights and ethics, quite simply, is that human rights are legally binding obligations of the state. And ethics, on the other hand, is something that really depends on person to person. It really is quite vastly different between societies. And a person could follow a different set of ethics in different situations, right? So ethics is subjective, whereas rights are actually quite certain. But how they're applied and how they evolve is also subjective. So it's quite interesting to look at these two issues of human rights and ethics in the same breath. Now, like I said, we'll be looking at some key questions, right? One of the questions that we need to be looking at is what values should drive the internet in terms of how it is developed, how it is experienced, and how it is regulated. Now, the reason why I'm saying developed is because we've seen now, like anyone who's watched The Social Dilemma, for instance, and many other documentaries and read extensively about it, will know that the way some of these platforms are developed are actually developed to drive us in a certain direction. Now, does that direction affect my rights or not? Now, we've talked about rights as in terms of its framing, but actually what are we talking about, right? When we're talking about rights, we're talking about freedom of expression. I'm not exclusively, I'm just giving you a few examples, but rights are much broader. Practically almost all rights today apply to the internet. So we're talking about freedom, right to education, right to information. We're talking about right to access to equality, livelihood, gender equality, like Liza had talked about quite extensively. Then we're talking about privacy, right to privacy. We're talking about right to culture, right to religion. There's also right to health. And then there's freedom of expression. There's freedom of assembly and association. There's a whole array of rights that is somehow mediated, impacted, or enhanced by the internet, right? So then how do we develop a value system that helps us look at how this internet is to be developed, experienced, and regulated? So when we're talking about developed, we're talking about what kind of ethics, what kind of rights-centered discussion should we have in terms of how codes are developed, in terms of how digital tools are developed. If a digital tool and a code is already developed with the central aim of impacting rights, then it is quite impossible for us to regulate it in a way that is not going to be harmful. So even from that stage, we need to develop a temper to look at rights. And then there's a question of how the experience happens. Now, a classic example is sexual harassment online, cyberbullying online. There's both the person who's perpetrating the crime, the rights violation, but also there's a person whose rights are being taken away, right? And then there is a question of how the internet is regulated. And this is actually a very critical part of the internet governance discourse. Now, what we have seen is that over the last 10 years especially, we've had multiple regulations. I'm not only talking about laws, I'm talking about policies as well. There have been multiple policies that have been thrown at us in terms of how the internet is to be regulated, whether it is spectrum regulation, whether it's platform accountability, or different cybercrime laws that have come up. It's been quite a challenge in terms of keeping up with them. But what has been even more interesting is that offline laws are also used to regulate online behavior, online tools. So for instance, your classical penal codes are anyway used on how, for instance, your activities online take place. But then there are internet specific regulations that are now coming up. So who is sitting and discussing these regulations? What is the ideology or philosophy, or what is the main concern they have when they're developing these principles and these policies? So what would ideally be good for human rights advocates and civil society at large, some may argue, and I would argue, is that these regulations should place individuals and societies, the well-being of individuals and societies, the rights of individuals and societies at the center of the discussion. Oftentimes, there's this notion of juxtaposing security versus individual rights. But when you're talking about security, you're talking about human security, you're talking about the security of individuals and collectives. It's not a notion as if security is separated from the individual, right? So we need to ask about, when you're proposing a principle, a policy to me, what value are you proposing it to me with? Now, the second question is, now with this understanding, how do we go towards talking about the kind of internet governance that we want? Internet governance is not something that you can just have lawyers sitting around and discussing. It's certainly not something that you can only have technical community involved in, or the academic community involved in. That is why spaces like the APR IGF are so critical, because you need to bring together all of these individuals. But most importantly, I would argue that you need to bring together communities that are most affected by this internet governance. You need to have indigenous communities present. You need to have women present. You need to have queer persons present. You certainly need to have minorities present. Now, for example, in South Asia, hate speech is a reality today. And you need to have minorities and affected communities present to talk about how they want to tackle the problem of hate speech, right? So to have this conversation, we need to bring individuals together. We need to bring these different sections of societies together. But most importantly, we need to develop a language about talking about what kind of internet governance we want. And most importantly, what's the problem with the kind of internet governance we're having today? And this is what we could all try to do during the different sessions, is to ask these questions when we're talking about regulations. No? Like, okay, have you heard this voice? Did you consult these communities when you developed this policy? When you decided to only give spectrum to big companies, did you take into account the autonomy of smaller communities? Like, things like that are important for us to remember. Now comes the question of, do we have the right to internet, like as was raised in the chat? And I was planning to talk about this more from an access perspective. Now, we all are pretty much in agreement that access to the internet is a stepping stone or an enabler to us exercising a whole host of rights online, right? If I don't have access to the internet, there's no question of me making a livelihood on the internet. There's no question of me expressing myself. There's no question of me accessing critical information or me attending classes during COVID. No, without access, none of this is going to be possible. But when we're talking about access, it's not just a question of, here, I've connected you to the internet and that's it, right? There's a question of whether I'm having feasible connection as compared to others, whether I'm able to actually afford that connection. Am I able to, access the internet in a meaningful way? We need to talk about meaningful access, which is beyond just accessibility and pure access questions. For instance, during the discussion that Liza presented, there was a question of, yes, a woman might seem to have a mobile device, but who actually owns that mobile device? Is she subjected to surveillance during the access to the mobile device? Is her browsing history going to be checked by her brother and father, right? There are all of these questions that we need to keep in mind. And that brings us to the question of, has the right to internet become a thing now, right? Now, in my earlier years in the legal practice, I was in the environmental laws work. So then one begins to wonder, has internet become like air, like water? You don't expressly have the right to air or water in legal treaties, but you have a recognized right to life, and you have a recognized right to the environment. So based on those, these are rights that are derived, right? For you to have the right to life, you need to have the right to water, you need to have the right to air, you need to have the right to a clean environment, because that means you actually get to live, not just exist. So then the question is, has the internet risen to that level? Now, the ICSCR, which is the International Covenant on Economic and Social Rights, economic, social, cultural rights, also recognizes the right to scientific development. If we had to look at the internet or digital tools as a result of scientific development, then we do have the right to it. But the question is, do I have the right to a particular mobile device, or do I have the right to this broader notion of the internet, right? And you see that in some jurisdictions, for example, in Europe, and then also in a high court in India, the court has recognized the right to internet, saying that you can't unfairly take away the right to internet. So I think we need to have a bit more discussion on this. And to sort of bring my conversation together, let's look at what are the sessions that are on these rights and ethics during this APNIC. And it's very interesting. There are three kind of areas that the sessions focus on, right? And we are kind of stepping back. Sorry? Okay, sorry. So these are the three sessions which are going to focus on what are the digital rights problems in Asia, what is the role of platforms, which is really important because we see with Black Lives Matters and many different things, platforms have played a critical role. And also the question of how do we get into these multi-stakeholder conversations. So what would be good is going into these sessions and asking one key question. Is my problem reflected there? Is my perspective reflected there? Are my people thought about in those discussions?
Okay.
Thank you. I'm sorry I ran over.
That's fine. I know in this whole excitement, we want to say more, but thank you so much, Gaia. I will now hand it over to Duncan, and then we will have the question and answer. And please, keep to the time. Thank you so much. Sorry. Take care.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be. It gives me great pleasure to briefly introduce this section on innovation and development. Very pleased. My colleague Sylvia will give the presentation. Sylvia is, as we speak, testing or exploring the very boundaries of the internet here in Australia. For those of you who think everyone in Australia is connected, that is not the case, and Sylvia is on the very fringes of our connectivity, visiting remote communities that have some level of connectivity, but not all level of connectivity. So her presentation will focus on this theme. So I'd like to ask Christine, please, you can start the presentation.
Okay, just a sec.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sylvia Cadena. I am here to talk to you about the Innovation and Development sub-theme of the APNIC 2020. I'm the head of programs for the APNIC Foundation, and I spent quite a lot of my time working on those two big words, innovation and development. I'm an industrial designer by profession, and this is a topic that is very dear to me, and I'm very glad to be able to introduce it to you today. Unfortunately, I'm here in New Hampton in middle of Queensland, and I don't have internet where I am. So I'm very sorry not to be able to share this time with you, but my colleague, Duncan Macintosh, will be around to answer any questions you may have. First of all, these are the three sessions that the program committee approved around innovation and development for the APNIC 2020 program, and I encourage you to attend all three of them. One, the session about learning from home during COVID-19 focuses on the fast, forced speed process for digital transformation that many educational institutions had to go through because of COVID, and the possible lessons learned around this experience. The second one is around universal acceptance and internationalized domain names, which is an innovation that has been around for quite some time, but the promotion is an awareness. It's part of making sure that innovations are adopted at scale, and this is part of that process. And the last, not least of the sessions, is the the first session around environmental impact, which is, we are very proud at APNIC to be the ones introducing this topic into the APR-IGF, and we hope that this dialogue will bring a lot of positive thinking around how the internet industry can help to mitigate environmental risks and reduce negative environmental impact. So here are the dates and the times in UTC. So I hope you can explore the program and familiarize with yourself with those and join those sessions. So I'm going to dive into what it is that we are talking about when we talk about innovation for development. I am going to use the methodology of the 6 Ps across this brief conversation and introduce a couple of concepts that are based around design that might be of use for this group. So, well, yes, creativity is a new idea, but innovation is actually the opportunity to make that idea a reality. There is, when you tackle any new idea around an innovation framework, the idea is that you actually touch on 6 Ps, these 6 areas that where either innovation is required or where the innovation is the key part of the process. So, for example, I listed some examples on each one of those so that you can see how they refer to, and there is a little bit of that later on in the presentation. And of course, development refers to have that work, that creative work with purpose, to advance knowledge, to advance understanding, to take care of well-being for others, livelihoods, the digital economy, you name it, but to have a clear purpose about why it is that you're doing what you're doing. The principles of human-centered design about here, create, and deliver. And that framework is very well established, especially around the introduction of new products to the market. But it has also been tested around policy development that is related to how those products are used, especially when we are referring to digital assets. So, although I'm not going to to explain the whole diagram, there are lots of references out there in the internet you can see and how to use, but I just want to stress out that how important it is from the APR, IGF, and the IGF context and point of view to how we, this listening mode, this multi-stakeholder mode about trying to empathize, research, and understand is so important to be able to advance any innovation in our industry. Those innovations are in this human-centered design methodology are always looked through 3 lenses: what people want, what can be done, and what is technically and organizationally possible. So those are very important drivers to keep on check, to make sure that anything and everything that we are doing for our community is actually something that can be achieved, and we will not fall short about what it is to reconcile, especially what people want with what is feasible. I'm going to use an example of an internet router where you can, there is an lots of internet innovation as many products on the market that you can think of that are taking care of the 6 Ps, right? If we take the example of a router. But if we use that same example of the router and we add the development lens to all of this, then instead of an internet router, we are talking about a low-cost, low-maintenance self-configuring router for community networks that allows open hardware and software design process, that if you buy one, you donate one, that has a license from the government to freely manufacture and operate, that is widely discussed in practitioners forums and has community support, and that there is a movement of people behind. So you can kind of take that object and turn it into and analyze those 6 Ps when you think only about the purpose, and you see how that changes when if your driver is only commercial, like on the other example where you see just a router by itself. The design for purpose when done using ethical principles, is very important. So I put on the screen 3 examples of digital development principles, the ones done by DL, the ones done by the Designer's Ethical Skills Toolkit, and the ones done by the Center of Humane Technology, that are different, but are different but are the same, let's say. So they are trying to achieve is that when you introduce something to the market or you introduce a new piece of legislation, you have actually thought about this in those lenses, and you are ready to commit and explain to what extent, for example, you build for sustainability, or for what extent you have moral sensitivity, or you are ethically approaching the issues that your product or process or policy is trying to introduce. When we talk about this framework around development and purpose, and how to improve the lives of the people around us, the SDGs 2030 agenda from the UN is a framework that has 17 goals that UN member countries have agreed to follow up, and that are looking at action in 3 fronts. The global action, which is around countries that are monitoring and reporting around all of these goals and their targets, and then local action also at the level of cities and local governments to agree or align themselves with what the actual country is trying to achieve in terms of those goals, but also calling for people's action. And that's where all of us can fit. So our engagement and participation can help us achieve those targets. So SDG 9 includes internet infrastructure, but if you look closely to all the targets from the different SDGs, you will see that they are all, to a certain degree, refer to digital technologies or rely on the internet to be able to achieve that purpose. So I put an example there with the goal 13, sorry, in the projects that the Seed Alliance, which is one of the programs that I've been participating in, funded over the years that are aligned with the SDG 13 on climate action, just as an example. So that concludes my presentation for today. So the idea is basically that you try to figure out from the local, from the personal point of view, what it is that you can do to improve the lives of people, to stick to that purpose, to do it with principles, no matter how hard it is, and to make sure that the innovation that you are chasing is something that can be construed and built collaboratively and participatively. Thank you very much. Enjoy the APR IGF 2020.
Great. Thank you so much, Sylvia. I know this is a video, but Duncan, would you like to say something? Because you have exactly 2.5 minutes left.
Well, thanks, Anju. I think it's just to say to everyone listening and watching, we welcome the discussion around innovation and development. For us, it's a really key subject. You've seen Sylvia's outlining the issues and key points from our perspective. I would highlight maybe one point to sort of try and stimulate some discussion, and that's how in the development community they have perceived the internet for many years. I think for those familiar, for example, with some of the large development financing organizations, they've always kind of viewed the internet as an enabler across other sectors such as health and education. But you can clearly see a shift in their thinking to where the internet is much more now than just an enabler of the development of other sectors, in that it now stands alone as a very important theme or pillar within the development process. The Asian Development Bank, for those who follow the Asian Development Bank, has gone through a process like this, where for a long time they saw the internet as an enabler in development, but now they very much are looking to establish it as a theme and a pillar in their development and funding processes. But thanks very much everyone for listening. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Duncan. I just want to remind everyone that there are technical jargons, technical, information, and if you're not familiar, please feel free to ask. We're always here to provide response regarding, some of these technical information. So now I would like to hand it over to the participants, and if you have any questions or even a comment or thought for Gayatri and Duncan, please feel free to raise your hand or use the chat forum. Maybe Bhaskar, would you like to say a few words? Because I see that you were chatting.
Thank you very much. I think I just raised my issues in a text box. Like we are seeing that digital inclusions are really difficult regarding persons with disabilities. So just I raised those issues.
Gayatri, would you like to respond to that? Thank you.
Sorry, I'm not sure I got the question right. Is it about digital inclusion being overlooked and not being a part of development policy?
Yes, yeah, digital inclusion is often overlooked. Yeah. So if you could just align to that, that would be great. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, see, again, this connects the first sub-theme with the digital inclusion sub-theme with the rights in discussion, right? Now, for example, let's break it down and look at a specific example, right? For example, for instance, if we took persons with disabilities, whether a country like India, for instance, are we implementing W3C, requirements? Now, you got to have this conversation with actually groups that are working with persons with disabilities and with persons with disabilities, because oftentimes we have superficial fixes for these problems that don't really help. So the only way, this goes back to the question that I raised when I was discussing, is analyzing the power structures in the policy making around internet governance on the internet. We need to have these different groups actually have conversations and give their opinions about these different policies before they enact it. So the only way for us to do that is to have more conversation. And the mistake that I'm talking about the mistake that all of us are making as the internet governance community, is that we've made discussions around the internet and internet governance so difficult to have. It's actually quite frightening for people who don't have a technical knowledge to provide input to how the internet is governed. And similarly, when we have lawyers and people who work on human rights talk about the internet, we make it so difficult for persons from a technical background to have a think about it. We need to come up with a way to have a common language and an easier way to talk about digital inclusion and infrastructure and all of these issues.
Much, Gayatri. Are there any other questions? Has anyone raised their hand? Please feel free to ask any question. Don't worry about this, because it's all about learning. So even for me, I've learned a lot from the speakers. I've learned a lot from Gayatri and also Duncan, Liza, and Noelle. So please feel free to ask any questions. Oh, okay. Amrita, please, over to you. Amrita, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, perfect. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now, Anju?
Yes, I can. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, my question was, during APRIG of this time, under the innovations, are we having any sessions which is actually going to discuss more on how technology has been used for social good, especially related to COVID, or even trying to see how it can help children or students who are at home to even connect and stay online, go through their classes, etc. Because it has badly affected the people who cannot be connected at this point of time, because a lot of things have gone online.
Duncan, would you like to respond to that? Thank you.
Well, thanks very much for the question. I think I can only highlight what's in the program coming up in the next few days, and particularly the sessions that we have coming up tomorrow. There's more of a focus, though. It doesn't address the question particularly, in that we're looking at capacity building and technical training. Beyond that, and excuse me, I'm just rapidly having a quick look at the program. There is the sessions that the other one around. Again, it doesn't address I think your question directly, but it was around the internet's environmental impact. We're trying to bring in new issues and new thinking, and we're very pleased that the APR-IGF will be the first forum of its kind to look at the environmental impact of the internet. But beyond that, I know that doesn't address your question directly, but that's what I would highlight.
Okay, thanks, Duncan. I will hand it over to Jennifer. Jennifer, are there any questions from the chat forum? I can see there are a couple of comments. Would you like to ask? I mean, there's a question. Is there any question, sorry, specifically for Gayatri or Duncan? Thank you.
Thank you, Anju. There is a comment from Yingchu Chen. When people talk about the inclusion, we need to think about how to make them to use an affordable price to access internet and make a better economic development, education by themselves.
Thanks. Anyone keen to respond to that, or would you like me to go ahead and ask a question? Thanks. Gayatri or Duncan? It's not a, sorry, it's not a question, it's a comment, but if you would like to add, that'd be great.
I would agree with the comment. Beyond that,
I mean, the only thing I would add to that comment is that I assume this is different from region to region, but I think there's one more layer to be added to the question of access, which is democratizing infrastructure itself, is being able to enable smaller internet service providers to be in the game. The problem is that we have these huge players who make the rules directly with the government, and we have absolutely no say in it. So I think we need to really have a rethink about access from a perspective of the individuals having right to access and having sort of some anti-competition approach and consumer protection approach to access. And that should come with the discussion around community networks.
Great, thanks. I have a question for you, Gayatri. How would you respond to, because there are some questions directly coming to me, so I will ask, how would you respond to groups who refer to human rights as a Western ideology forced upon other cultural groups?
Yeah, okay. So this is actually an interesting question, but it's something that's existed for decades, ever since the 1993 Vienna Conference happened and all of this. Especially this is an argument that comes from our region, because we propose this idea of Asian values vis-a-vis Western values. So now I have a very simple question. If human rights are only a Western concept, how come so many constitutions of our countries have these rights enshrined, correct? I'm sure that all the countries from which the participants today come recognize that we have the right to life. You can't just kill anyone at any point, right? We do have education, we have water, we have many other things. Yeah, there are different regimes in which right to religion is understood differently, but fundamentally we all agree on the fact that these rights are there. So that's one. So factually all our constitutions do recognize rights. So that's one. Now, the second notion is to believe or to further this notion that human rights are a Western concept, is to also further the notion that Asians do not respect individuals, do not respect our agencies. Is to say that we are somehow treated as a secondary object in our own countries, right? That is, it actually comes from a very patronizing place to say that it's a Western notion, which is not true. Our cultures have had, if we had to talk about historically instances of our cultures having different recognition of rights, it's been there. In fact, I would actually argue in a different way, because if we look at the African Regional Convention on People's Rights, it has way more rights than even what the Universal Declaration had. It recognizes the rights of peoples as societies together. So I think it's an argument that doesn't really hold any water.
Okay, thank you for that. Jennifer, over to you. I see there are a couple of comments and questions on the chat forum. I don't think they're comfortable to ask or raise their hand. So please, can you ask? Thank you. On their behalf.
Of course, thank you, Anju. There is a question from Amir Mokabari. His question is, what the UN family and IGF community can and should do to address this vital issue? And it's in reference to a longer comment above. I will also read it out. It says, hello everyone, especially distinguished panelists and dear colleagues. I would like to thank you all for convening this timely session. I'm Mokabari from Iranian academic community. As you all know, the effects of unlawful unilateral digital sanctions on some nations have become intensive and more destructive, especially during COVID-19 pandemic and other emergencies. These digital sanctions on investment in ICT infrastructures, technology, digital resources like IPs and DNS system, and access to networks are key barriers in achieving national development goals using ICTs and constitutes human rights violation in cyberspace. His question is, what the UN family and IGF community can and should do to address this vital issue?
Gayatri, over to you.
Well, I'm not as well versed. I mean, I haven't really worked on these issues for me to give any on the specific issue of the country in discussion. But I can give you an example of surveillance. So, for instance, there have been many instances where surveillance technology developed in countries like, for instance, Israel is used to import to other countries to perpetrate illegal surveillance. So there has been a lot of discussion at the UN and Internet governance forums to talk about what should be different state responsibilities in terms of cross-border implication of digital technology that they are developing. And I think that it's actually a very critical question, and there's no answer to it because of the rapid nature of the internet and of digital tools. So I think we need to have spaces like the Internet governance forums to have these conversations. But this again goes back to the notion of harm and impact done by certain actors over others, especially in terms of power relations.
Okay, thank you so much, Gayatri. So we have one person who raised, Walter, you've raised your hand. Just give me a minute because there are questions from Herman and also Ashrafur Rahman. Would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Hello, sorry, are you talking about me or the others?
Sorry,
Walter,
I was
speaking.
Okay, go ahead, Walter. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Sorry.
Sorry.
It's maybe Duncan can actually answer this question. Or considering this pandemic crisis, I see that the program for innovation is quite heavy on education, on the side of education. But I'm just wondering if there was some thoughts to have some opportunity to discuss some of the health aspects of things, or how creative or innovative ideas can help address health issues, or how can these creative or innovative ideas facilitate the new processes that are in place to combat this crisis?
The short answer is yes, you're right that there is an emphasis in the program on education, but I think, and while it's hard to think of the virtual equivalent of a corridor conversation, or for everyone who knows the APR-IGF and the IGF processes, so much value is had in meeting people across the coffee table, and that's harder to do. I'm certainly be around all this week. I think there's others as well. I'd be very interested. We as representing the technical community in the region, particularly a member of the technical community, are very interested to sort of try to understand that the points that you make. We're focusing on education and training, but health, obviously, and the impact of COVID on how we think about health in relation to connectivity and the role of connectivity with health initiatives, particularly how it sort of shifted. You can start to see governments starting to think quite differently about connectivity because of its importance with health and supporting health programs. I think the best quoted one, or the most quoted one, is around, there was the assumption that you could provide health advice to communities through the internet, but then you realize the connectivity you need to provide COVID advice is not there. And so it's really helped governments see, and even you could highlight that here in Australia, as I mentioned in the introduction to Sylvia's remarks, there's the assumption that everybody's connected in Australia as a developed economy, but that is simply not the case. There are many remote communities here in Australia that needed health advice around COVID that could not get it reliably because the connectivity was there. So you had a government here in Australia really being highlighted after telling Australian communities for years, everybody's connected, everybody's got a mobile signal, we've got the NBN. The COVID really sort of lifted the lid on that and revealed it wasn't the case. So then they're forced back to say, well, how are you going to fix this problem? Because if you're going to be honest about the level of connectivity, you need to recognize these problems. And of course, I'm talking about a first world problem when right across the region, it's much more complex than that. Many economies facing much, much more challenging situations than what I've just mentioned in Australia, but I just highlight that one particularly. Did that address what you were thinking of, or you have other particular interests as well?
Because we're running out of time, so sorry. I will ask Walter and you to get in touch directly so that you can discuss further. But I will now ask Ashrafur to please ask your question, and then Herman, we will ask your question, and then we will wrap up. Thank you. Ashrafur, are you able to ask your question? Yes.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. This is Ashraf Rahman. I'm from Bangladesh, and I'm the fellow of BDC. Just I have a questions. The whole world, we know the passing a tough time during this COVID situation, whereas every country we know haven't same access. I think based on speed, here is most of rural areas who haven't same access or same speed. So have we planned to do something for that community to connect with the whole global internet community? That's all. Thank you.
Duncan, over to you.
So that was a question around plans to connect the global community. Did I get that? Just to clarify, is that what the question?
Is that who are living in the rural areas? Though.
Well, I think if APC, I know would be one for connectivity in rural areas. Maybe Gayatri, did you want to talk more about APC's work on connecting in the rural communities?
Yeah, so there has been a lot of discussion around access, whether we look at UN spaces, the OHCHR, the digital divide discussions. A lot of work ISOC has done. APC's focus around access has been on empowering local communities to be able to own infrastructure. Because the point is that, Ashraful, this is exactly the point. No? Unless you own infrastructure, it will always be we'll always be left at a point of negotiating with these big providers about where they will choose to provide connectivity. Now, I'm sure a lot of our colleagues from small island nations will be able to talk about the difficulties in assuring internet connectivity to smaller islands that they have, little atolls that they have, right? Because it's simply not economically viable for many of these big providers to do it. But they do have the right to access the internet so that they're able to exercise a whole host of other rights. So I think that's number one. But there's number two, there's a bigger problem in countries like Bangladesh and India. Even places that are connected are susceptible to lose their connectivity because of the rampant internet shutdowns that we have. The government still has the right to shut down the internet wherever they want, whenever they want. And that's a problem that the internet governance community needs to address from the rights-based perspective. So there's already those two problems. One is rural communities are not connected, and the other issue is that communities that are connected are still very susceptible to lose that connectivity. So I think the main issue is that while we can look to the internet governance forums and the broader global discussions, we need to actually push our national governments to democratize infrastructure, to democratize spectrum allocation and other policies.
Great. Thank you so much, Gayatri. And also Duncan, thank you so much for your responses. I'm so sorry for the participants. I know it's an exciting time because everybody, again, wants to ask so many questions and we also want to learn. But I welcome you to email the Secretariat, and we are happy to provide our contact details to the Secretariat. So please feel free to do that. And yeah, I would just like to wrap up quickly before we hand it over to our next champions. So thank you so much for your time. I hope this was great and informative and interactive. Like I said, use the Twitter, Facebook, ask any questions, and one of us will always provide our response. So thank you so much again for your time. Now I will hand it over to our champions, Aris and Naveed. They are our fellowship committee co-chairs, and they will moderate the next half of the session. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you so much. Speakers, thank you. Christine?
Hi, this is
great.
Christine. So
I see
Naveed
Naveed.
and Aris, you can turn on your camera and your microphone now.
Naveed, over
Yes,
to you. Aris, over to you.
Thank you, Anju. Thank you, Christine. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining in. It's been a very interactive 2 hours, 14 minutes so far. And I'm really happy to see how some of the fellows have already taken up the stage. So you might have heard some questions from Walter, who is one of our fellows. So that's amazing. For the next 20 minutes, we're gonna just quickly go through some of the fellowship a bit of APR-IGF. This program that we've been running since the inception of APR-IGF has a purpose, and the purpose is to bring new voices, give an opportunity to participants, to people who are interested to come and be part of the internet governance discussion. Although the fellowship program primarily is of travel support to people who cannot perhaps come by their own to APR-IGF face to face, and fund their travel and their lodging and boarding so they can be part of a wider group of participants. Unfortunately, due to the current pandemic, the fellows were not able to travel to the beautiful country of Nepal. In fact, none of us have been But it's really good that still we have this group of the next generation leaders, if I can call them, joining us for the next 3 days, including this today, day 0, to tell us more about what was the reason why they applied for this program. And by the way, this selection is a competitive process. This year we got more than 313 applications. So for a fellowship committee, for myself, for Aris, for other colleagues who are part of the committee, it's not an easy job. We have to scan through all the applicants and then finally come up with the best people based on the certain criteria. So I would like to thank you and welcome all of the fellows again who are with us during this session. And I would like to ask them to raise their hands so they can introduce themselves and we can give them a microphone. Or they're also welcome to introduce themselves on the chat, so the larger participants that we have today here can know about your name, your country, from where you are. And if you want to take the microphone, I'll also like to ask you to elaborate on what is the one key outcome you are thinking as a fellow once we complete this APNIC. So please raise your hands. We're going to give you microphone to speak. If you are a little shy to not speak, please put your name and your country and your background in the chat so we can at least know about you. In the meanwhile, I'll just quickly hand it over to my colleague Aris to tell us a little bit more about his experience as in the fellowship committee, and how does he felt about this program this year.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Naveed, for that one, and thank you for covering it up for me. It's the reality. I just got disconnected exactly when it is already on my queue, so it's really funny. But that's how being online it is. So, but with regards to the fellowship committee, it's really a very challenging task for us to be able to come up with this around 30, right, Naveed? So around 30 people who are it's who are really selected in terms of with their purpose, with all of the engagements that they have. And we think that these 30 individuals could bring about more on the discussions, more on the involvement, and more of the engagement of all the things that are needed to be discussed with regards to the realm of internet governance and beyond. And we know that these people, and as I think with regards to all of the ones who are the alumni who would be sharing their experiences right now, these people have brought all the discussions at a global level already. It's not only within the Asia Pacific, but already in the global scale. So I think I hope that the ones that were selected right now will gain more inspiration and continually be engaged, not only locally within their communities, but also bring all of those discussions up to the Asia Pacific and hopefully going towards the global level. And I think it would be great if we're going to go on and maybe let us, give the floor to the fellow alumni and maybe inspire all of those people, not only the ones who are the current fellows, but also some of the attendees right now who are thinking of being fellows later on in future APRIGF events. Okay, Naveed, take it away. Thank you.
Thanks, Aris. Folks, I'm not this balcony that is in my background is actually a vacation that I took last year, so don't feel that I'm sitting actually in a balcony. Just to put it out there. No, thanks, Aris. So yes, of course, I see some of the people have introduced themselves. If not, I know your names and I'm gonna put you on stage. So for example, I would really like someone from the fellow to speak on. So Walter, would you like to take our floor? Just tell us about your inspiration of applying and being a fellow, and what do you see coming in next 3 days, and what you want to take out of your fellowship experience, please.
Always putting the island on the spot. Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me? Just to give a nod if you
Loud
can hear
and
me.
clear.
Okay,
Loud
great.
and clear.
Thanks. I think the only reason I actually took this fellowship is that I wanted to actually visit Nepal, and that was pretty much it. So that's not the case.
Wow, we lost Walter. Or is it me?
Hello?
You're back, Walter.
Oh, sorry. I'm not too sure where you guys heard me, or
You were
do you want
telling
to
us
start from the beginning,
about
or?
coming to Nepal was as a fellow. That's where we lost you.
Okay, so that was the only pretty much reason why I applied for this, but that's very unfortunate that I can't come, so might as well just log out of this. But that was just joke. But the main reason why I actually took this fellowship opportunity is just to actually explore what internet governance actually is, because that's a pretty new area for me. And of course, looking at the internet, like Duncan has mentioned, is not just an enabler now. It can be a standalone thing, or it can be a driver at some stage. So I would like to actually leverage the opportunities or the benefits that internet can actually offers to actually facilitate the health initiatives that we're actually trying to actually, especially with this COVID crisis. So taking as much as I can from whatever I can actually reach out to, especially this internet governance or the internet. I just want to learn more and actually learn from what other countries have done successfully, and also their failures as well, because that will actually help our little country Tonga. I'm not too sure if anybody knows what that is. It's one of the Pacific Island countries. It's actually it's a dot in the map. And yeah, I'll probably just full stop on there and let everyone else talk, because there's not much time there.
No, thanks, Walter. That was fabulous. Really good to have you, and really good that you have already, bringing up some of the context, some of the questions. It's really good, and that's what I would like to encourage to the rest of the fellows as well, folks. Unfortunately, you cannot travel to Nepal. Don't worry, there would be an opportunity in future as well. Hopefully, we'll be out of this together and we'll be able to travel again. But meanwhile, please use this opportunity the next 3 days, be part of the workshops. I remember the previous webinar that we had with all of you. We gave you some of our suggestions on how you can prepare coming into APR IGF, and now this is day 0. We are already into it. So we expect that you're already prepared the list of workshops, the sessions that you want to attend. You already have something in your mind from your country perspective, and you'll be asking it. I'll bring in Farhan, if I can bring you on the stage. Just one more introduction from the fellows, and then we'll go to some of the success stories or inspirations from alumni, people who have been part of the APR IGF fellowship program, and they can tell you how they started as a fellow, and now from that moment to now, how they have moved into this journey and some of their achievements as well. So, and that I'll bring after Farhan, if you don't mind.
Can you hear me, Naveed?
Loud and clear.
Thank you very much for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to speak. It is actually a pleasure to attend APR IGF and meeting so many new people. So the intention behind for applying the APR IGF fellowship was actually to learn about the internet governance. So this is the what I'm mostly interested in, and I've been attending different internet governance forums locally, for example, in PK6. So I'm basically, I forgot to tell my name. I mean, my name is Farhan, and I'm actually from Pakistan, and So the main, I mean, I was looking on this APNIC main. We know that it's a great platform for for to discuss and exchange and collaborate at a regional level and at a nation level, at APEC level we call it. So the thing which I was mostly interested in was to meet first to meet the community, because being an Asian, I was very much keen to meet the stalwarts of internet governance which we have here in Asia, and learn from them, and share my own experiences, and they're very interesting sessions, and which are lined up for the APRGF sessions. Particularly, I'm much interested in the cybersecurity ones. And the program is well structured. We have been assigned mentees and mentors, sorry, and the relationship between the mentees and the mentors is kind of very healthy relationship. It's a nice opportunity for us to learn from them, and so it's overall very well designed. And I really want to thank again the fellowship committee, Internet Society, APNIC, all these sponsors for providing this opportunity, this unique opportunity for all the fellows, not only me but all the fellows from Asia, so that we are in order to encourage and foster this culture of comradeship and learning. So thank you very much.
Excellent, thank you, Farhan. And now I see that since Walter has started speaking, I see a lot of people telling their names. They are first time, some of them are fellows. Excellent, good. Please keep it going on. And it's such a diverse people that we have, starting all the way from what I see Michael from Myanmar, then I see people from Bangladesh, from India, from Taiwan, from Philippines. Excellent. Please keep on sending about your name, from where you are. It's really good. From Cambodia, I just see Hang Sokle. Welcome, Hang. And yes, you are also one of our fellows. Excellent. Now, I'd like to bring on stage some of our alumni, those people who have already gone through this process, to tell us about their experience, to the newcomers, and also to the fellows on perhaps how they can prepare themselves and some of the inspiration. So I'd like to start with Jaewon from Korea. Jaewon, she's an amazing. She's one of those fellows. Honestly, as a fellowship committee, I've been part of this fellowship committee since years. So she's an inspiration for me. I see Jaewon. I read her tweets. I see how she's stepping up, how she got opportunity to speak on international forums, and she's still keeping on this. And I wish her more success in future. Jaewon, the floor is yours. Please tell us a little bit about you, about your story, and some inspiration for the newcomers, please.
Thank you so much for introducing me, and by hearing how difficult was it to choose all the fellowship and stuff. Though it was last year, I really appreciate that I was a fellow. To introduce myself, I'm Jaewon from Korea, and I was a fellow last year. After that, I began to have many other opportunity in IG experience. So currently, I'm a committee member of KR-IGF, and I'm also joining the Youth for IG as outreach coordinator. Recently, I have co-founded the Korea Youth Stakeholder Group in Korea. So to begin with, I initially had interest in internet governance, as I was interested in multi-stakeholder model, bottom-up process, and youth empowerment. But after all the experience, I began to have more interest in internet's role in sustainability and environment, and vice versa. So these days, I'm also volunteering as a mentor for Youth Ambassador of IGF. During the APR-IGF, I was assigned for the Access and Universality theme, and for the fellow, you have to be a rapporteur in the final plenary. So I was joining the sessions under the theme, and I was being a speaker for 2 sessions. One was with the Aris and one was with the Raj. So if it would be the same year this year for the fellows, I believe you'd have to also join some sessions under the same theme that you have been assigned, and you'd have to summarize what you have like learned through the theme. So what I wanted to share was you should like keep this in mind, that you'd have to say something about the session and then try to prepare it beforehand, because all of the session has really a lot of information. So if you begin to start preparing it afterwards, maybe you would have like difficulty in summarizing everything. So keep this in mind. And also not only the theme that you were assigned, but also there might be the other session that you might be interested in, even though you are not assigned in the theme. So try to go to the other session, because you never know who you will meet and what you would get to learn afterwards. Because this year I'm having a session with the Amrita and Raj, and I began to know about Raj just because I went to the other session, even though it wasn't my theme. So again, you never know who you will meet afterwards if you join the other theme. So including the session that Amrita and we will be doing on Wednesday, it's on encryption. So if you are interested in encryption and child protection, feel free to join our session and any other session that you might be interested in. So yeah, please feel free to ask any question if you're interested in the fellowship experience, and I look forward to hear from all of you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, J1. This is Aris again. So for our next sharer, I would like to call a chair. He has been a very prominent figure already in the internet governance field and has brought discussions of key issues up to the global level, up to the global IGF. And he has been a fellow, correct me if I'm wrong, Shrideep, if it is 2016 in Taiwan. So without further ado, I'll give the floor to you, Shrideep.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me? So this is Shrideep, and I strongly believe that it's upon the young people and leaders about what you want to do. The horizon is open. You come to all these multi-stakeholder forum, and you try to engage. But the thing is, you have to be very open, very flexible. You have to be very smart. You have to prepare. The good thing about these forums is you can just go and learn and adapt that. You can share it in your social media, be productive. It is all about what you can do. It is not about what is being said, but it is about taking that knowledge, sharing it there, and taking it back to your community and using it in such a way. So that is very important at the point of being a youth, being a new leader, and things. So the most important thing I see in all the newcomers, in all the leaders is, we people coming from Asia, we have communication barriers, but these platforms give us the, it give us the knowledge, and we can use that. And, it's upon us how we are going to use it. Use it in social media, go share it in a school, document it, make it big. The opportunities are endless. And you can start, people are always there. Aris is there, Naveed is there. Everybody is reachable throughout the internet. So it is so connected. And all these days, after I started, after I did the fellowship, the thing that helped me was, the engagement part is there. So you have to initiate. Thank you.
Thank you, Shrideep. Shrideep is always that, he's that person, you start listening to him and you feel like your blood is circulating fast. He has that energy, I so like him. Thanks, Shrideep. By the way, we don't only have the APNIC Fellowship Program, folks. We do have APIGA, which is Asia Pacific Internet Governance Academy, managed by ICANN. ISOC also supports it. So that we see some of the people of here are from APIGA. There is also a Net Mission Youth IGF, which is managed by .Asia. So it's all good to see that there are not only one opportunity, there are multiple facets of how various organizations come together to give more opportunity to youth and next generation leaders. I just read someone from Myanmar telling us that he's just 17 years of age and still starting the journey through this APR IGF. So welcome to you. We have Vashkar from Bangladesh. He's also a great inspiration. He's visually impaired, but Vashkar has done wonders for persons with disabilities not in Bangladesh, but for the broader community. He's also our fellow this year for APR IGF. So a great diverse group of fellows, and I would also suggest all of the fellows to make connections with each other. I mean, I have seen some of you making good friends, talking about some of the food stuff, how's the curry sounds in Pakistan, and how's the rice made in Indonesia, etc., etc. So please keep on going those discussions around rice, chicken, and all those dishes in your countries. And the last one that I'll like to bring before I hand it over to Jen, and she's going to tell us about the synthesis document, which of course is another opportunity for the fellows or newcomers to be part and reflect their thoughts and into a text document that the APR IGF produces as an outcome document of the proceedings. Millie, if you are here with us, please tell us. Millie is actually also one of our fellows, and now she's running Youth for IG platform. So Millie, over to you.
Thanks, Naveed and Aris. Firstly, I think the Fellowship Committee has done a great job of bringing about this diversity. Hello, everyone. I'm Millie from India. I've been a fellow in 2017 and 19. And obviously, I think as the APR IGF community is just a great addition to your life, not just in the IG space, but all the other things that you will keep learning as you go. I'm going to keep it short and just give you like really two practical advice. One for the conference itself, which is virtual this year, and one what to do after. So for the conference, and considering it's virtual this year, I'm just putting down some tips that I have also incurred from my virtual work life currently. What I would suggest, and this is something we did at the physical forum as well, keep a dump, like a notepad or something throughout the day with you as you're attending sessions. Put down the thoughts, questions, remarks, or even names of people that strike you during the session. There's anything that strikes you, just put it down there. Do that simultaneously, do that at the end of every day. Sometimes at the end of every day, if you can get your mentor to just chit chat with you, get together with a couple of other fellows. It can be via WhatsApp. It doesn't have to be on the same Zoom platform. You can do it on the side via WhatsApp or any other platform, and just discuss some of these things, put it all down together. These things that you put down now are really helpful. Even the names of the people, if you think of, oh, this is a person I want to talk later, just put down their name, probably put down their organization. You can look them up later, if not at the same time. And I think the beauty of it being virtual is you can just simultaneously, do a lot of the chatting on the side. Like what I did when I was at the physical forum, if I didn't know somebody, I would literally Google their name while I was in the session and be like, okay, why is this person saying what he or she's saying? And it gave me a lot of context okay, this person comes from this background, which is why his or her view on this is like that, or from so-and-so country. So that is easier right now. When you're virtual, you can just easily go Google, you're right in front of the laptop. I think we had that rule when we were at APR IGF last year, saying we couldn't be in front of the laptop screen. And I think it was a great rule, obviously, because in person, you want to look at the people. And here, when we're compelled to look at the laptop screen, then use that to simultaneously look at the people, reach out to them, send them the LinkedIn request right at that time. Take down these notes. These will also help you, as Javon said, later when you have the summarizing session at the town hall, or even just to generally participate at the town hall. So it'll be a good idea at that time. So save this data. Secondly, I would say is find informal opportunities to network with people. So I understand it's Zoom and you're restricted and you're not meeting people as we would have usually met, but don't let that discourage you. Do reach out to people. On the Zoom itself, you have the private chat feature. You can find these people, but continue those informal conversations through the conference, through the next, all this week that you're here. find us, find other youth, find the alumni, speak to anybody. The best part about this community is supremely open. Everybody's very, very approachable, even if somebody you think who's much older, much senior. And I'm saying this because I have gone to Naveed or Aris just literally with some silly questions sometime and be like, why is this like that? And you know, they've been very kind to just at that time tell me what I needed to know or give me the context. And it could be anything to do with the organizing bit. It could be how I could do more. I can't understand this particular topic. So feel free to, you know, raise that question. If you think you don't want to put it in the chat or raise your hand, just put it privately to somebody. Do not hold that back in. Put it on WhatsApp, put it on a Facebook page or anybody you have connected with on Facebook. Feel free to connect with all the alumni. And the easy way to do that would be just go to Youth for IG Facebook page. That's a youth community that we started. And this is literally made of all these people who went to APRIGF, to APIGA. So we all went to some of these, or all of these programs, got together and said, we needed to be united as young people. We needed to be united so that we could keep doing more of this, even after the conference is over. So now coming to, you know, what do you do after APRIGF virtual forum is over? You still continue to stay engaged at the local level, yes, but you also want to be, you know, friends with all the people you've met from all across APAC, from Cambodia, from Myanmar, and this year so many different places. So how do you do that? So be a part of these various groups, these networks, so that you're constantly updated. You know what's happening. You know what to look forward to. You know, there is another conference coming up. You know, the IGF is coming up. How do I navigate that space? Or, you know, APIGA opens up next year. So how do I get to know more about how to apply, what to do? Or even if something's happening at your local level, at the country, you can share it out with more people. You can get more input. So this learning and sharing, try to keep continuing that. There are many, many forums to go to. It's not easy. You do get lost, yes. Which is why the other youth and alumni are here to help you. So take advantage of that. Feel free to reach out to me, Jaywan, Samred, so many others here. I'll put my credentials on the chat. I'll encourage Jaywan and everybody else to put so y'all can connect with us immediately. And that would be a great starting point. So I wish you all good luck for the next week and have a great time and look forward to listening to your thoughts. Thank you, Naveed. Thank you, Aris.
Thanks, Millie. So folks, just a reminder, there is a closed captioning happening. So, you know, please switch it on if you want to see the captioning that's going on. There is a happy hour cultural night happening on 27th of September, 10 to 12 UTC. Note down in your calendars if you are interested to know more about the cultural stuff of the people who are joining APNIC. There will be food, drinks, games, arts. There's a lot happening up. I just read someone asking about a WhatsApp group. I don't know about that, to be honest. I'll let the secretariat to answer that if there is a group, or is there any idea or any thoughts to have a WhatsApp group about the participant. No problem, Samrit, don't worry. I got a private message from someone saying that he's also a fellow that I couldn't join, but no worries at all. Good that you have joined us finally. So with that, I'm gonna miss momos. Of course, they are one of my favorite dish in Nepal. But don't worry, I hope next year if we do it in Nepal, we'll get a chance to have momo. And this is all for my friends in Nepal. Thank you for you know, the offer to host this APNIC this year. Unfortunately, we cannot make it to Nepal, but I'm sure some day soon we all will be in Nepal, enjoying momos and having some nice drinks and watching out some of the cultural dances in Nepal. I love the music in Nepal as well, by the way. Aris, over to you, and then you can hand it over to Jennifer for your closing remarks from the Fellowship Committee. From my side, it's bye-bye. Aris, you muted.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so I hope that the fellows and all of the attendees who just got inspired, that they would want to be fellows, and to the current fellows, I hope that you got a thing or two from all of the alumni that have been part of the program. And so hopefully each and everyone, not only the fellows, but all of the people here are currently attending, do enjoy and being a fellow. That's one. And number two, get a lot of insights coming from all of the sessions within the week, and hopefully you will be more engaged and hope to see you around. So I think that will be all for me. So again, I will be passing it to Jen. Jen, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Naveed, and thank you, Aris, and thank you all the fellows and alumni for sharing all the great experiences and aspirations they hope to experience at APRIGF. So you would have been hearing from Raj and the speakers and Anju and also Naveed about the synthesis document that is actually a key output of APRIGF. What this is an annual document that collects and collates all the issues that are discussed during that particular IGF, the year, APRIGF in the year. And it highlights issues, especially with regards to our region. Currently, the synthesis document draft 0 is live. You can see that the URL is on the screen right now. You can input all your comments and your questions into the document right now, actually. And please do join us during our live town hall sessions on the 29th and the 30th of September. It will be the very first session of the day. We hope to hear a lot of you highlight issues that you've heard and discussed and may not have come to consensus with, or things that you feel are very important to the APRGF community and should be highlighted in the document. So we do encourage you both to input in text on the platform at comment.aprigf.asia, as well as come join us in the town hall sessions. Another thing we would like to call attention to is APRIGF is actually one of the many national and regional initiatives that do benefit from support from funding from IGFSA. If you want to support that global IGF movement, please do go and donate to IGFSA at igfsa.give.asia. I will be dropping these links in the chat. And right after this, we will be heading into the breakout group discussions. We will now split you all into the sub-theme groups to be led by speakers that we just all heard from. Here in these breakout groups, you can dig deeper into each sub-theme. You can ask your questions and also see what you would like to focus on in the coming 3 days. We're splitting up into the breakout group discussions so we can have a more intimate discussion and share with your fellow participants. We will not bring you back into the main plenary, but we do hope that you have a really fruitful discussion. We have allotted 30 minutes, but please do feel free, speakers and moderators in the breakout sessions, please do feel free to go over if there's a very vibrant discussion. And lastly, we would like to remind you all to, of course, attend our opening plenary that starts tomorrow. So with that, I will let our Zoom ninjas and technical staff split us all into the break